Hi, welcome to the Scott Patrick Show. This is David Lyons, your host, along with Bill Huff from Huff Real Estate and Huff Capital Partners. We're going to be talking today about due diligence and how you do a due diligence on a property that you're looking to purchase or a project that you're looking to purchase, and how the due diligence that you do can create huge profits for you. I had my mentor told me that due diligence is the biggest thing and the best thing that you can do for real estate, because it will literally tell you whether or not you should buy that project or get into that investment, because the numbers don't lie. The numbers are the numbers. You just need to be able to find the proper numbers to be able to plug in to see if this is a project that is going to work for you and your goals. Remember back in episode 1, what your why is, why you're getting into real estate. And due diligence is a big part of that. Now, over the last 2 weeks, I've been in the Grand Caymans doing some due diligence, beginning due diligence down there, still doing some due diligence on a couple properties that I'm looking at down there to be able to potentially purchase. And we were going to actually do a live broadcast from there, but we actually couldn't, because for some reason, I don't know why, but for some reason, Zoom was not authorized to be able to broadcast in the Grand Caymans. So next time when I go down to the Grand Caymans, I will bring different equipment so that we'll be able to get some views of the properties and that as we're going through things. So anyway, so my mentor always told me that you are spending hundreds of thousands of dollars, and in some cases maybe millions of dollars, and you want to be able to make sure that you're putting that money into a property or into a project that is going to bring out the profit that you want. So I have a list of questions. Bill, I don't know if you do or that. I'm sure you do. Your mind kind of works in the same realm as mine, as far as engineering and everything. But uh, I have some questions that I have right off the bat. The first question is, how much do I want to be able to make?
Mm.
What's the minimum amount of money that is the bottom ROI for the project? How much do I want to be able to make on this project? And my number is always 40%. That's it. If I'm making less than 40%, it's not a project that's going to be worthwhile for me, because I need to be able to make 40% or more
Right.
on a project. The other is, once you figure out what your base profit margin is going to be, now you have to start to develop the due diligence part of it. What information am I going to need to be able to figure out if that project is going to make 40% or more?
Mhm.
So for me, uh, we can kind of do it this way. Let's say, for instance, Bill, we have a house that is, say, $500,000,
Mhm.
500,000. That's the asking price on the property, and I want to be able to purchase that, fix it up, and then I want to be able to do short-term rentals with it. And I was sharing with somebody just a couple days ago, the difference between short-term rentals and long-term rentals. Probably a good thing to be able to define that.
Mhm.
Long-term rentals is over 30 days. It's like 30
Right.
days to a year.
Right.
It's a lease, you get a deposit, they pay X amount of dollars every month. And you hope that they pay every month.
Right.
That kind of
Right.
a thing.
Right. Right.
Short-term rentals is like Airbnb.
Right.
There are people that are in the property for less than 30 days, but more than 3 or 4. You know,
Yeah.
somewhere in that range. So that's considered a short-term rental.
Right.
So when we have a property that say is they're asking $500,000 for this property, okay? And I want to be able to see uh, get the due diligence started with that. I need to be able to as going for short-term rentals, I need to be able to see what that property has already produced for the last 3 or 5 years.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, so I want to be able to get what's called a rent roll for that property, which is any serious investor that invests and does short-term rentals or rentals in general, they have a rent roll of the people that are renting the properties, how much that property is how much the rent is, how much the expenses are, and everything. They have that all worked out, so they can go in at any point in time and say, this is how much I made in month one, or year one, this is how much I made in year two, year three, and hopefully, you know, that's kind of going up, and you get a couple things from a rent roll. You can get what the occupancy rate is for the year, or when the peak months are for that particular property. You can get um, uh, the expenses that are involved in that property, you know,
You,
pretty
you,
consistently.
you may also see the rent roll may also identify other sources of income in addition to the nightly rate. And that's always a good bonus to help supplement the occupancy rate. Um, let, let me ask you a question.
Hmm.
On the occupancy rate, do you
Mhm.
have a set amount? I know you and I have talked about occupancy rates a lot,
Well,
but
occupancy rates are very similar to how much money do I want to make on this project.
right.
And you can look at property, and let's say, for instance, this property that's for $500,000. Let's say that it brings in $100,000 a year
Okay.
in short-term rentals. Okay, so you have $100,000 in short-term rentals, and let's say that your expenses are, say, 25%. So we'll say $25,000. That's like property taxes,
Hmm.
you know, electricity, you know, all your things. So you have $75,000 in net profit every
Hmm.
year. Okay. Let's say, for instance, uh, you uh, get a loan on the property, right? And
Okay.
let's say that loan is at 70% loan to value. Let's say the value of that property is $500,000. So 70% of that $500,000 is $350,000. So I have to
Correct.
get a loan for $350,000. And let's say, for instance, you know, you're getting that loan for, say, 6.5% interest. You know, so that's $2,275 in interest a year divided by 12. Well, we'll just say it. Six. What was it? Six
You
thousand
said
seven fifty. 2,000. 2275. We'll just take the change out of it. So you have your interest in there, you have your principal payment in there, which is going to be 350,000 divided by, you know, say, for instance, you did say what's normal, like 30 years. You know, if somebody did that through Avenue B
sure. Yeah.
or Avenue
Typical.
A,
We'll just assume right.
typical bank. You know, so
Right.
you
So
have
long term, 30-year, amortized, fully amortized over 30 years. Um,
so that's what, 360 months.
yes.
So that's 972. in change with principal. So you're looking plus 2275. So you're looking at roughly a principal and interest payment of 3247 a month times 12. So you're looking at 38,967 a year that you're paying in principal and interest,
Mhm.
minus the 75,000. So you got 75 minus. This is how great minds work. So you're looking at a net, an estimated net NOI of $36,000 and $36,033. So we'll just call it an even 36,000 just for that. So that property with your principal and interest for borrowing the money and for the expenses that are incurred in the property, you're looking at $36,000. So what we want to be able to know is, does that $36,000, what does that equate to with as far as a net ROI to the project, right?
Correct. Right. Right.
So the total cost of the project is 500,000. Well, you put in 500,000 because you
Mhm.
had to put downstroke down. You had to put a down payment down because the bank was only giving you 350,000. So you had to come up with 150,000 down to be able to make the property work, plus closing costs. But we aren't going to do closing cost thing. So you have 36,000 divided by 500 equals times 100. So you're looking at 7.2% a
Right.
year, which, when you start to look at it and everything, 7.2% might be a pretty decent return on something. If your occupancy rate with that figure was, say, 50%.
That's exactly where I was going to go. So now you can.
So what you
And
can do now is you can do a couple different things, right? You can extrapolate out that 7.2%. And if you want to be able to make 40% on your investment every year, which is pretty hefty, right?
right.
It's for the whole project. So let's say, for instance, well, let's go back. So when we talked about structure and we talked about being able to do things, we have what's called an exit strategy, right?
Yes.
So let's say our exit strategy on this property, on the short-term property for $500,000 is going to be, we're going to hold it for 5 years.
Okay.
Okay, we're going to get the full depreciation out of the property and the accelerated depreciation, which that's another show,
Right.
the accelerated depreciation, because that does a lot of different things. So we're going to hold it for 5 years. So let's say we're going to run this out for 5 years. So let's say everything is consistent for 5 years at
Okay.
50% occupancy times 60, or no, 7.2 times 5. So that's 36%. Not bad over the 5 years. And then if you
Right.
sell,
Right.
if you sell the house and the property for, let's say it appreciates for at what, 2.5 or 3%
Yeah. Yeah. Worst case.
a
Yeah.
year for 5 years. So you're looking at maybe let's be conservative and say 12% appreciation times 12%. So oops, 60,000. So your property, if it appreciates $60,000 over that 5-year period, you could possibly sell that property for 560,000
Right.
and get an additional $60,000 in profit, which would probably get that pretty close to that 40%.
Correct. And that's before even going in and doing kind of some what I call what if analysis to determine um, how to maximize profit. So obviously the first thing we probably do would be to look at that occupancy rate, right?
Right.
That's all all the math is based on 50%, correct?
Yep. All the math is based on 50%.
So this is a good problem set. So then like, I'll sit and ponder what is my target occupancy rate?
Mhm.
Let's say 80%. Let's say we're trying to hit 80%.
Yeah.
That
So now if we're going, okay, so if we can raise that occupancy rate from 50% to 80%, I'm definitely going to be over my 40%.
absolutely, absolutely.
So you actually start to narrow that down as to what is the minimum occupancy rate that I have to have in order to get 40%.
Right, right. At bare minimum,
And
yes.
even though we put in that extra 60,000 with the appreciation, when I'm doing this kind of calculation for due diligence to be able to see if the project is going to be profitable enough,
Mhm.
I don't want to calculate that 60,000 in there.
Right, right,
I want
right.
to leave that out.
I
I,
see.
I want to be able to hit 40% or more just on the occupancy rate and the gross receipts that are coming in for that particular property or
Okay,
that particular project.
I see. I
You
see.
know, the 60,000 is kind of a buffer
I see.
because even though you might sell that property for 160,000, you're not going to get that whole 60,000 because you got real estate commissions, you've got other things that come out of that.
Very
So
true.
you might have maybe 40,000 or 45,000 of that 60,000
Right.
coming in. And,
Very
it
true.
might be taxes or different things along those lines or capital gains if you
Right.
don't do a 1031 exchange and stuff. So, there's different things that come into play. Um, but yeah, you can start to target that occupancy rate to get to pretty close to where I need to be able to be at to make the property work.
Right. Right. Right.
Once you have that, let's say for instance that rate just for this is 50% is just a little bit shy. So let's say 60% is that minimum occupancy rate that we need to be able
Okay.
to hit 40% pretty solid, a pretty
Okay.
solid 40%. Now I start to ask the questions as to how am I going to get that extra 10% in occupancy rate? What do I need to be able to do? Well, the first thing that we can do with due diligence is ask the seller who has the rent roll, how are you getting your customers?
Right.
Is it strictly through Airbnb? Is it through a number of different platforms? Are you doing your marketing on your own? How are you marketing that property to be able to get your occupancy rate of 50%?
Right. Right.
Because that's a major question that you need to be able to ask and have answered, because that can tell us then what we need to be able to do to increase that from 50% occupancy to 60% occupancy. So
Right.
let's say, for instance, this particular seller was just doing just had the listing on Airbnb. So that the seller was relying on Airbnb's marketing
Right.
of the platform
Right.
for people to be able to see his property and to book his property.
Right. Right.
Okay. So if I were to um, increase that from Airbnb to like booking.com or some of these other platforms that I can list the property on that can commingle calendars,
Mhm.
Um, I might be able to get an additional 10% or maybe 5% from those other platforms,
Right. Right.
along with the Airbnb.
Right. Right.
Or you might develop your own website. You might be able to market the property yourself in some form or fashion through different avenues. But in doing that, that's going to cost you more money to be able to develop that, which is going to be an expense that's going to start to eat into the profit. So you have to kind of balance out,
Right.
how am I going to do this? How am I going to be able to structure this property to be able to make the money I need to hit that 40%
Right. Right.
consistently,
Right.
for the
Um,
next 5 years.
the I mean, whether it's Airbnb or Booking.com, there is a cost there that the seller has incurred. But in your analysis, you'll say, okay, well, I have to assume that cost as well as by expanding I'll call it a listing. I struggle with the term marketing on some of these platforms, but
Yeah, yeah,
um, if you increase the listing to multiple other sites, that yes does incur an additional expense, but the thought process is that the income generated from the additional leads that convert should cover the additional expense and provide, additional profit. Um,
correct,
yeah.
correct. And these are some of the things that you start to do in being able to do due diligence. The next thing is the next question. Okay, how much do I want to make? And you start to get your information, rent rolls, and everything to be able to figure this out. The next question in your due diligence is the property worth $500,000?
Right. Right.
Right. So how do we go about figuring out, is that property worth $500,000, or am I paying too much for that property for the amount of money that property is generating?
Right.
So how do I figure that out? How do I know if I'm being overcharged, $100,000 because somebody just wants to make an extra 100 grand, but the revenue generated from the property doesn't support that price,
Right.
right?
And well, I was just going to say, in this case, you're going to look at potentially two different models. One is going to be a comparison model, and one will be more income generated model but both back into a number. And typically those numbers should come close to each other.
Hmm.
So comparing it to other properties in the area, that's one way to do it. And then using the yearly income to back into a cost. So, and typically, if it's a property, it's going to be, um, well, both will apply because it's residential. But doing it both ways should give you a more firm idea of the actual value and what you should pay for it.
Right. I ran into a formula calculation that's a cap rate.
Yes.
There's different formulas for different kinds of cap rates. Cap rate is basically the value that is placed on a cap rate can be a value that is placed on a business.
Right.
The value of the business has what's called a cap rate. But you can also do a cap rate on real estate, from the revenues that are generated minus the expenses.
Mhm.
But the overall revenue, you can calculate that into the sale price, and that will give you a cap rate.
Right.
And then I think you multiply that by, um, oh,
Uh,
what is that? What is that number? You multiply it by the
You're going the other way. Let's see. So
so, so you multiply it by the equity. Is it the equity in the property? Or not equity, but
well, the cap rate's is derived from
oh,
the net operating income based on what you
gross
paid for it.
gross and expenses gives you a net operating income divided by the price of the
Right.
property.
That gives you cap rate.
That gives you the cap rate.
Right.
And then
Uh,
and then and then I can't remember how that is done. I probably should have looked it up, but you can actually reverse that out with once
yes,
you have the cap rate, you can reverse that out and it will give you a number
correct.
of
It
say 420,000 or 440,000, which is what the actual value of the property should be for the money that is generated for that property.
correct. Yes, absolutely. And
So,
and, and
so,
in a lot of cases, the cap rate um is by location, and you'll have cap rates for not maybe a city, but maybe a section of the city,
mhm,
and
mhm,
they're different cap rates. So it's not a one size fits all. So you have to understand what is based on the property you're looking at, what is the kind of the cap rate for that area or surrounding the property.
right. And just for people that listen to this show, this is very technical stuff. You're really getting into the numbers part of real estate, and you should always do your own research on things. But remember, like my mentor told me, you're looking to invest hundreds of thousands of dollars or millions of dollars into a project. You want to make sure that that project is going to be a good investment for you that's going to target and hit the profit margin that you want to be able to have for the exit strategy that you have for the property.
Correct.
And these are the things that you need to be able to do. Buying a property for a real estate investment isn't just going and looking at the property and walking around through the property like getting into a car and taking it around the block and then going and writing the contract up on the property
Right.
because you or on the car vehicle because you like how it rides. It smells nice.
Right.
You can't do that with a house. You're going to be broke
Yeah.
if you do that kind of a of of a of a purchase with a property and you haven't done your due diligence and on the property because I guarantee you if you go down to the banks, they're going to be asking you for how much money does that property generate. I want to see the rent rolls. I want to be able to they're going to do their underwriting and due diligence because they want to make sure that that property is going to generate enough money to make that payment.
Right. Right. Right.
You know,
You said underwriting. What does that term mean? Just for your audience.
underwriting is basically doing the due diligence on a property. I call it due diligence. Bill calls it due diligence. Banks, lending institutions, they call it underwriting.
Right.
It's going to underwriting. But for the financial end of things, there's more involved in the underwriting other than just the rent rolls and how much money that property can generate. Banks are going to ask for your social security, for your credit report. They're going to ask for your income. They're going to ask, and they're going to calculate what's called a debt to income ratio
Mhm.
to make sure that you're not overextended, that what you currently have as far as debts, this property is going to fit into that to a certain percentage. And if it goes over that percentage, they're just going to say, no, we can't do this because for them, it's not a good investment to invest in you to buy that property
Right. Right.
because it's not hitting their profit margin. It's not
Right.
hitting their 40%.
Right.
I'm not saying that that's what their number is, but they're doing the same thing to you that you should be doing to the property.
Absolutely, absolutely.
And I can't say it enough, if you don't do this for the properties that you're looking to do, your real estate is not going to be a good thing for you. It's going to get ugly really quick,
Right, right.
because you might get a property, you might get it, and then you're into it, and a few things start going sideways, and you didn't do your inspections, you didn't do things that you were supposed to be able to do to see if that's a sound property, or what kind of work I have to do to be able to get up to where it needs to be a short-term rental property.
Mhm.
You have to remember that short-term rental properties, it's not just buying the house, right? You have to furnish that thing. You have to have the pots and the pans, the dishes, the glasses. You have to have all the little knickknacks. You have to have the linens. You have to have all that stuff in there. The barbecue grill, whatever. Those are
Yeah,
costs those are the upfront costs that you have to put into that property to get it up to being able to be a short-term rental property.
right. And this kind of goes to being able to, once I mean, what you're discussing is the operations side that have to now tie back and support your upfront analysis. So yes, it all kind of comes together. And just backing up a little bit further, there's a, when the average person goes to buy their home, the loan is based on them versus in a short-term rental or a multifamily property, the banker or the lending institution is going to look at the performance of the property, and
Mhm.
that is different from the type of analysis that goes into someone buying a home they're going to live in, a primary home.
Right. Yeah. We aren't dealing, when you're talking about real estate investment, we aren't talking about a primary residence. We're talking about an investment property that you are not going to be occupying.
Right.
And we've said this on episode 2 and 3. You're dealing with two different kinds of lending on property. Your banks and lending institutions, or going through the asset being the property itself,
Right. Right.
right? So we want to be able to make sure that if we're going down private investors, and we're looking at private investors to be able to get our funding from, which Bill and we usually do. um, that's it's an asset based lending model. The property itself is going to generate the funds needed to make that payment to the investors that are funding the purchase of the property, and probably even funding the rehab of the property.
Correct.
And the rehab is, fixing the property up, getting it all staged and everything ready to go, so that you can start to have people start to rent the property out and start making some profit on the property.
Mhm.
So yes. The other thing is that, with doing a property, let's say for instance somebody doesn't do the short-term rentals. Let's talk about doing due diligence with just a fix and flipper.
Okay.
Okay. With fix and flip, you're you could say the same property. I want to be able to make 40% profit margin, right? So I need to be able to fix that property up and get some more value into that property. So when I put it back on the market, the asking price for that property is not going to be $500,000. It's going to be, say, 625,000,
Right. Right.
because now we're looking at what's called an after repair value appraisal.
Right.
These are appraisals that are done on a property that is going to be rehabbed or repaired and brought up. So the appraiser actually looks at what kind of flooring you're going to put in there, what kind of kitchen cabinets you're going to be able to do, what you're going to do to the bathrooms, if you're going to expand the bathrooms, if you're going to, what you're going to do, because the three things that add value to any property is kitchens, bathrooms, and flooring. That's it.
Yep. Very
You
true.
know, swimming pools don't add much value. Landscaping doesn't add much
No.
value. Putting a fence up doesn't add much value. Putting artificial turf in your backyard doesn't add much value. Um,
Right.
Bathrooms, kitchens, and flooring.
Right. Yeah.
That's going to be the things that people stick with as far as rehabbing a property.
Yeah.
So if I have to fully remodel a kitchen, fully remodel two or three bathrooms, and put new flooring down in the whole house, and then paint fixtures and everything
Mhm.
along those lines, and do some quick landscaping, make things a little bit more eye appealing from the curb to be able to get people to actually come in and take a look at the house. That's what's going to get that value up.
Right.
So now I have, let's say it goes for 625. So I have $125,000, and let's say we get an offer of 100 of the 625. Um, Usually closing costs are usually going to be around 10%. So we'll just say 62,000 for
Okay.
closing costs. So you have 125,000 minus 62. So you have $63,000 in profit on that flip, right?
Okay.
You have some costs involved with that. So you had a budget, say, of $25,000. Yeah. I usually use 30 on a rehab as my budget, and that doesn't change. It's always 30.
I see.
When
I
I do
see.
a rehab, it's always 30. So uh, because it's good for numbers, you're not doing
Yeah.
every property you did, is if the rehab's going to be more than 30,000, gotta go.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I use 30,000. So if it's less than 30,000, good. But if it's
Yeah.
more than 30,000, bad.
Right.
So I have 30,000 in cost. So I have a net profit of $33,000 on that initial $500,000 property, right?
Hmm.
So 33 divided by 500,000. So it's 6.6%. Is that free?
Yeah. Six. Yeah. 6.6%.
Yeah. Is that 40? Nope.
Nope.
Does that meet my guideline?
Nope.
So am I paying too much for that house? Yep.
Yes.
So what do I need to pay for that house? What do I need to get that house for in order to be at that 40%? I would say, just from the quick look at everything, I would say that I need to get that property for around 400,000, maybe
Yeah.
390,
That's exactly.
390,000.
Yeah. Yeah.
So my offer on that property wouldn't be 500,000. It would be 390,000. And then they're either going to take it or they're not. And this is the important thing. If you've done all your due diligence and you've done your inspections and you've done everything that you need to do, and you have all your information in front of you, and you run the numbers,
Hmm.
and you get your appraisal, you get your ARV appraisal back, and you're at 625,000. Okay, so when I rehab this, this property is going to be at this. But in order to hit my 40%, I'm going to have to be at, say, 390,000 to purchase that property.
Mhm.
So I'm going to put an offer in for 390,000, and they reject that, and they come back and say, well, we'll come down to 480,000. Still doesn't work.
Right, right, right.
So what's our answer then? No, next.
Gotta be prepared to walk away.
It got to be part of the deal. You got to be
Right.
prepared to walk away,
Yeah.
because that property, if you get into that property, that property is going to be a money pit, just like
Right.
Tom Hanks' movie with Shelley. Um, I forget her name, but that was a funny ass movie. But I'll tell you, it's very realistic, because that's what can happen. I
Well,
mean, you start getting into rehabs. I know it's happened to me, and I know it's happened to Bill. You start getting into rehabs, and you start pulling things apart, and then all of a sudden you start seeing things that the inspectors didn't find that have to be corrected.
right,
And there goes your budget starts going up, because now I have to fix this thing because I've got a wall completely opened up,
right, right.
and I've got to get it fixed. There's no question. So that means that instead of doing wood flooring, now I might have to do a different kind of flooring, because this problem is going to take an additional $10,000, and I'm going to have to put a different kind of flooring in to be able to balance that, or I'm going to have to do something maybe a little bit less in the bathrooms that I was planning on doing, or a little bit less in the kitchens that I was planning on doing,
Yeah,
to
yeah.
be able to get things where it needs to be. But when you start messing with that, you're going to start messing with your ARV appraisal too.
Absolutely. And how area appraisal, and how the property, the finished property fits into the neighborhood that it's in. Because if you cheapen some of the flooring or the countertops, and that neighborhood is looking for a certain type of flooring and finish out, that could also play into the whole analysis of that, you know and you trying to sell it to get yourself out of there. It could be tricky. It could
It,
be very
it can
tricky.
it can be really tricky, but I can't stress this enough. You really need to be able to do the due diligence that you have to have for every single project or every single property that you're looking at. You can't skimp on that, because that's really going to come back and bite you in the butt
It
if
will.
if you skip steps like
It
that, because it's not fun.
it
I'll tell
isn't.
you.
The thing you can't control is market changing between when you do your due diligence and when you've acquired the property.
Yeah,
Things
yeah.
change, and that's one of the variables that you can't. Conditions can change, and you have to kind of roll with it at that point. But
Well,
you're
yeah.
trying. Oh, go
It
ahead. Go
also
ahead.
it also goes back to, there's risks involved in anything.
Absolutely.
And the main thing that we want to be able to do is to minimize the risks associated with the project as much as possible. Due
Correct.
diligence helps to lower those risks. So
Correct.
what are some of the things that, let's say, for instance, we had an issue
Hmm.
with, say, plumbing or electric, or the
Hmm.
combination of both, and the home inspector didn't catch it, because the home inspectors, I'm probably going to get in trouble with this, but it's okay.
Yeah.
Home inspectors are good to do an overall assessment of what the property is.
Right. Right.
But home inspectors will never take responsibility if something goes awry, because one, they aren't an expert.
Right. Right.
right? They do an overall look of the property, and they report to you the things that they have visually seen
Right.
that need to be addressed,
Right.
right?
Right.
So what I have started to do, it's more expensive to do it, but it's better because when I purchase a property, I not only have a home inspector come in, but I also have a termite inspector come in and inspect for termites or any kind of damage that's done to the wood of the exterior of the property.
Mhm.
I have a roofer come in and give me an inspection on the roof of the property. I have a heating AC guy come in and check the AC and the heat and gas and the whole 9 yards. I have a plumber come in
Mhm.
to be able to check the plumbing, to, if there's issues with the plumbing, and I have an electrician come in to check the electric and to do an inspection on the electric. So that's 5 professional inspectors that are coming in to deal with the house
Right.
or the project,
Right.
in addition to the home inspection.
Right.
Now you can do the home inspection first, and you can get that home inspection back, and you can thumb through that 20 pages or so of inspection, and you can give that home inspection then to each one of to the roofer, to the electrician, the plumber, the termite people, and um, everyone that you're having, the AC, heat and AC guy,
Mhm.
so that they can kind of see what the home inspector saw, and
Right.
it kind of saves them a little bit of time in trying to dig around in and find the same thing, or they can
Right.
start at that point and then work their way back.
Right. Right.
But you're going to have a really comprehensive idea at that point in time in one, what issues there are, and then two, what's going to cost to be able to fix those issues,
Right. Right.
because those issues have to be fixed.
Yes.
So somebody's paying for those issues. It's either going to be the seller or it's going to be you.
Right. Right.
So if it's the seller, those expenses are going to come off of the sale price of that property, and maybe it is down to 425 or 415,000 or something like that. I mean, if you have to put a new roof on a property, you can't put a new roof on a
Oh.
property now for less than 30 grand.
Right. Right. Right.
I mean, it's 30,000.
Right. Right.
It's going to get ripped off and you're going to start all over. It's 30,000. I put a new roof on a fairly slow, it was a decent size. I forget how many squares it was, but it was 25,000 for the new roof and the gutters.
Right.
And it's like, the house only worth about 125, 150,000, and I just put $30,000 on
Oh.
a new roof. It
Oh my
hurts,
goodness. Yeah. Wow.
but that adds to the ARV, because that's a big thing.
Right. Right.
Putting a new roof on is a big asset. It helps with the value of the property because it's a 30-year roof,
Right.
and with depreciation and everything. So by being able to get more inspectors in there, professional inspectors that are specific for a specific part of the house, you're going to have more information in your due diligence to be able to see if you're going to hit your profit and if that property is priced
Right.
properly.
Right. Right.
So
Yeah.
it gives you more leverage in the negotiations.
Right. It does. It does.
The
And
other
it, oh, go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, the other thing is, when somebody goes to that length, like I would do, or like Bill would do, in purchasing a property, and you bring these specific things to the knowledge of the homeowner or the seller and the selling listing agent, now they have to disclose that stuff
Right.
to people.
Right.
They don't like that very
Right.
much.
Right. You-
why do you just do the home inspection and that? No, he had to have everybody come in.
right,
I'm
right.
I'm I'm being cursed up one side and down the other.
Well, they have to disclose it, and obviously that's there's a higher chance that's going to affect the overall asking price of the seller. So, but um, that's one way to look at it. Then another way to look at it, they could say, yes, we did have to deal with it, but we shouldn't expect any more surprises going forward because we were forced to address it or you know, you know, uh, resolve it or whatever the case may
Yep,
be.
yep. But that's when it kind of gets a little bit of fun, getting into the negotiation part of things. Bill and Bill, we've been talking about Project M for the last couple shows that we've been working on, and Bill and I've been kind of going through some of the rigors, probably a good word, with escrow funds and different things along those lines. I'm not a big escrow fund. Well, I have to take that back. I do escrow funds, but I do it in my time frame, right, Bill?
Right, right,
And,
right,
and sometimes that time frame isn't the time frame that other people want.
right.
And, Bill kind of brings me back and says, you got to kind of strike a little bit of a balance in there and everything. Yeah, okay, all right. But,
I
this
think
this this is still where I'm at. But the negotiations on a property is really kind of fun, but you have to have all your information in line in order to start to do that. Because
absolutely
if you don't have your due diligence on it, and if you don't have the information that you need to back up a price of 390,000 on a $500,000 house, you're just going to look like somebody that doesn't really know what they're doing. You're just lowballing things. No, I'm not lowballing things. You have issues,
right, right,
and the issues are going to take this to be able to fix.
right,
And you're at $500,000 and my ARV is at $625,000. And if I have to put $150,000 into repairing everything that's wrong with this house, I'm at $650,000. I'm upside down even before I start getting the first person in the house. I'm not going to buy it.
right, right,
390,000 and everything like that. I put $150,000 into it and everything. It still might not work
right,
even with that figure.
right,
So I'm being generous at 390,000.
right.
It really should be about 350.
And going back to negotiating, that would be, once we get on the other side of that, that would be to really go and review those numbers and how you went about that process went. That would be worth discussing because it really is a back and forth, um, and um, both sides are trying to you know use the leverage they both have.
Mhm.
And there's some give and take to some degree, but it's a it's a journey. And
When
yeah,
you start getting into the no, there's two sides to everything, right? We're just talking about one side on this. We're talking about the buyer's side and
right,
what the buyer has to do with due diligence to be able to make that project work for them, right? The other side of it is you've got a homeowner that has to get $500,000 for this house because they're upside down, or they owe 450,000 on it, and they're just trying to get out and get somebody in there to buy it for 500,000 so they can walk away without having to pay to sell
right,
their house.
right,
That extra 50,000 is to be able to pay the realtor fees and the closing costs on the seller's side to
right,
be able to get out of that property
right,
because they didn't do their due diligence and they got into a property where they overbid, which we're running into a lot of that now.
Yeah.
Back
Yeah.
in 21, 22, when the real estate market here in Texas and Austin and San Antonio was going crazy and people um, they were doing offers on the asking price, and then there were bidding wars.
Right.
You know,
Right.
they had three other bids that were over the asking price, and people were just so that they had an advantage. They had people that were saying, "I'll close in 30 days and I won't do a home inspection."
Right.
Why?
Right.
Why would you do something like that?
Yeah. 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 That was a that was
Bill,
a yeah,
that was a
well,
wild time.
it was. I remember just real quick, it was a house, an upper I was representing the buyer in the open house. It was flooded with people, and I submitted the offer. I wrote a letter, personal letter for the seller, through her words, had her sign it to add that layer of personality on, to submit with the offer. And she got, she won. But that was a a weird time that, those 24 36 months
Yeah,
was weird.
it was weird. And then to add insult to injury, to the people that put an offer in for list price and then had to bid against other bids, which I think, just personally, I think that's unethical for a real estate agent to do that, and entertain other offers to be able to get a higher price. I don't like that. I don't think that's right. I think if I think if somebody has a contract on it, they should either accept it or reject it, and other offers are off the table until
Right,
the first one. That's the way it should go. But
right.
that didn't happen that way in that
No,
time. And then the other thing that happened was that when the appraisal came back for that property, it didn't appraise. Remember, banks are only going to lend 70% loan to value.
right,
So if that property appraised at 500,000, they're only going to loan 70% of that 500,000.
right.
And anything over that you bid, say an extra 50,000, that
That's what,
you have to come up with another $50,000 out of
right,
pocket to
right,
be able to buy that property because the appraisal didn't support
right,
that extra offer. So that's a big red flag.
right. But you know how many
But
times that happened?
it happened a lot.
Yeah,
And,
yeah,
and people are suffering now because of it. There's a
yeah,
lot of houses that are on the market in Austin and San Antonio and even here in Houston, and that it's 3 years into that, and people are struggling, especially
yeah.
with the interest rate. And God forbid if they did an adjustable rate
Oh my
mortgage
goodness. Oh my
on
goodness.
on the mortgage, because they're dying now,
Right.
with the way interest rates are, and they're not coming, they're still not coming down.
They're not. They're not.
And they're either, if they're not in foreclosure now, they're probably getting pretty close because there's a lot. But it all goes back to, you have to do your due diligence. You have to be able to do your inspections. You have to be able to ask the questions. You have to be able to go into a negotiation with the property at a price point that is relevant to what your goal is for that property.
Right.
And
Right.
you have to be able to say no and walk away. We said that in the last episode. You've got to
Right.
be able to say no. You
Right.
have to be able to walk away, because if you can't say no and you can't walk away, you're going to get in trouble.
You are.
You're going to be like the people that are in trouble now that
Right.
we're doing those bid wars because they just got to have that house.
Right.
There's other
Right.
houses.
Right.
not at that
Right.
time. I mean, the inventory was pretty low, and it was definitely a seller's market
Right.
at that point in time. But no, things are kind of starting to change a little bit with that. So one other thing that I usually do when I start with some negotiations on what I want to be able to offer is I'll take the asking price, say $500,000, and I'll uh, do 65% of that, which would be 325,000 with this example.
Mhm.
That would be my starting point.
Hmm.
Would be
Wow.
325,000. So I wouldn't, 390 was a little bit high. That's
Yeah.
probably 75% probably somewhere in
Yeah.
that range, which isn't bad either. But buying houses is like buying cars. You never do the asking price.
Oh, right. Right. Right.
You
Right.
always go
Yeah.
down.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Houses, yeah, houses and cars are in that same bucket of overpriced. Uh, um, I don't even want to call them. In this, a car is typically not called an asset, and depending on how you treat the house, it can be an asset or a liability.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
uh,
But there's a lot involved with it. And just for everybody's thing, we talked about cap rate a little bit earlier. So down in the comment section, I'll have that formula for people on the cap rate to be able to calculate a cap rate on if a property is priced right
right.
for with a cap rate. I just didn't have it off the top of my head, but I knew it was something. I didn't want to say it wrong, but I'll get the right formula and I'll put it down in the comment section for people to be able to have. So, any other words of wisdom on due diligence, Bill?
No, that's you got to know your numbers. That's really where the game is on the investor side. It's not about emotions.
You can't be
Like,
emotional. You
right,
can't be emotional. Don't be
that,
attached.
right. This is a different game than what you have with a primary home, which there's this emotional decision. On the investor side, this is pure numbers, and the numbers
It's pure
should
numbers,
drive.
pure.
Right,
It's just business. It's
right.
just business.
It's
And
it's just like you buying a stock. You're looking for a certain return. This is the same thing. It's all numbers. You're trying to see if a particular property can hit uh, your target return. If not, you go to the next one.
mhm.
But it's a numbers game, and the good thing for me at least, it's a simple math. This is not complicated. We don't need to be rocket science. This is for the most part straightforward math um, here. So it's once you do learn the ins and outs and what to look for, it's not that complicated. I mean, I'm doing it, so it can't be that complicated. So
Nope. We just do spreadsheets, right?
right,
We have the algorithms already figured out. All we have to do is plug the numbers in.
right.
And as long as that thing over here in the green goes 40% or more, it's worth a deeper look.
Mm,
So it goes through stages. You go through the property. You kind of get an idea of what you want to be able to do, and you start doing those stages. You start doing the due diligence, start asking yourself the questions, you start getting the information from the realtor, rent rolls, or whatever needs to be done. And you start doing your due diligence. It takes a little bit of time to be able to do it. And I've done home inspections and inspections before I even did an offer, because I want to be able to know the information so
right.
that I can do the offer.
Right.
And does that cost money? Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
You know, when I get into a property, I'm going to spend 5 grand.
Right.
You know, if I start doing the due diligence on a property, it's 5 grand. And I don't get that money back if I don't do an offer, or if I don't get that property. It's just an expense of doing
Right.
business
Right.
to be able to find the properties. But you know, inspections cost money to be able to do, but it's worth it
Right.
because I would rather spend $5,000 and say no and walk away than get into a property that's going to cost me 150 or $200,000 instead of the five.
Right. Right. Very true. Very
Yeah.
true.
So yeah, it's fun though. I
It,
wouldn't
it,
change it for the world.
it is.
It's a lot of fun, and
Yeah.
it's fun teaching it to somebody else. It's fun being able to go through the whole thing, and you know, we're looking at some bigger projects, but we're going through the same steps.
Right.
You know,
Right.
that we would do for a duplex or a triplex or quad or just a single family home that we're going to be purchasing and doing short-term rentals with.
Right.
You
Right.
know, the process is always the same. It doesn't fluctuate.
Right.
And I've learned from mistakes, learned that this is the process that I need to be able to do to lessen the risk
Right.
so that I can make the profit margin that I do
Right. Very
or
true.
or want to be able to make. And does that mean that there aren't going to be issues? There's always going to be issues.
Right.
Always going to be issues. You know, Bill sent me over, you know, Project M and everything, and they had some adjusted costs on the building per square footage. Right,
Hmm.
it went from what 16 million to 17 and a half, or almost 18 million.
Right.
And one of the things that's in there, it isn't in there yet, but you know, it's the sideways movement because something's always going to go wrong and there's always going to be an additional cost that's going to come up into things.
Right.
And that has to be factored in, even though it's not in those numbers.
Right.
That has to be factored in. So you have to
Right.
be able to factor that in to see if this project is going to be able to be worth getting involved in, because we're not talking couple $100,000. We're talking millions.
Right. Right.
And that, so you don't want to make a mistake, and you definitely don't want to get in there and then something happens or they find some bones,
Right.
you know, when they're digging, you know, and doing the horizontal work and they find some bones. Worse, I don't even want to think about it.
Or the we here in San Antonio we had the endangered spider, and so
Endangered spider.
it this was
You
about
gotta,
a
you gotta, you gotta tell the story now. You can't just end up.
well, this was gosh, it's been maybe 10 years or more, and they were extending a highway. And I guess as part of this extension, they found an endangered spider, and the project came to a complete stop for over, I think it was many years.
Holy cow.
Yeah. Until and I'm not sure
That
if
would
they,
drive somebody to drink.
right, over an endangered spider. I just, first of all, who discovered that the spider was endangered? I just, but it's a good example of you did it, you did your homework, you did your due diligence, and this is a situation that you had no idea, and it happens, and now you have to react. Now your project that you had the perfect timeline has been slid to the right 12 to 18 months. What does that do to your budget?
Right.
You know,
Right. I mean, and even with Project M, you know, we're kind of dealing with that kind of a situation because, you know, with the city,
right,
you know, originally they were going to have a final approval on the development of Project M, right? And uh, they were looking to be able to get uh, uh, some additional lots in there, but ended up getting kicked out of the queue for the final approval and put down on the bottom of the list, and they had to go all through that again. And what that did for me is that instead of possibly breaking ground in October of this year, now it could be February or March of 26.
Right. Hopefully worst case, but
But
yeah,
it extended because of something that went sideways.
right.
And I'm not that deep into it yet, but what that just for for the sake of due diligence and what we're talking about in the program today, what that does for me is, okay, I have the funding now for that project. And I have a timeline on that project of 12 months on a grace period on the interest that I have to pay on the funding for that project. So if the project doesn't get started until, let's say, worst case scenario, February or March, before they get the final approval, and then they start breaking ground, say 30 days after that, let's say April,
Okay.
and it was going to be 10 months
Right.
to do the horizontal work,
Horizontal.
which horizontal work is the sewers, the water, and the roads,
Right.
and the electric to the lots and everything. That's the horizontal work. For the vertical work, the actual building of the properties. So 10 months from April. So we're looking April, May, June, July, August, September, October, November, December, January of 27.
Just to go vertical. Right.
Just to so that we can start building. And then it's another 3 or 4 months from that point.
Right.
So we're looking at May of 27 before the first house can be sold
Right.
to be able to make the money to see. I have an interest payment that's going to be coming due in September of
26.
26.
Right. Right.
So there's an issue there. You
Right.
know,
Yeah.
I've got to figure out how to be able to, because that's a huge interest payment,
Right.
to be able to put in there during that time frame. So I've got to figure out how that's going to happen,
Right.
because if it goes any more sideways with the timeline, I can't do this one.
Right.
You know, because
Yeah.
my clock's ticking now.
Right. 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 It is. It is. And
You
but
know,
this. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
but that's just exactly what we're talking about.
Right.
You know, you have to be able to look at things. You can't be attached to it. You can't be
Right.
emotionally connected to it. You need to be able to say, no, I have to walk away.
Right.
Let's find something else. Let's go somewhere else. Let's find something else to be able to do, because this is creating a risk that is outside. You know, it's creating an issue that is going to cause a lot of stress,
Right.
and it could get worse,
Right.
and it can't. You
Right.
know, so in order to alleviate that, I'm going to have to say no to, you know, just as a, you know, I'm going to have to say no to this because it can't move anymore in that direction.
Right.
You know,
Right.
because I'm already, you know, 5 6 months over
Right.
where the original timeline was supposed to be at.
Right. Right. Right.
So yeah, but got to be able to say no, right?
You have to. You
You
have to.
have to be. It's a good project. It's a
Yeah.
really good
It
project,
is. It
but
it is solid, and
but
I even have to because it's a solid project. I even have to make sure I have my mind straight, because you can get trapped into these projects. We all have our, you know,
well, we invest our time in it. We
yeah,
invest our energy into it.
yeah.
But you know, that's the job,
It
right?
is. It is. You go to sleep.
That's what we
You
have to be able to do to be able to make the big bucks.
you go to sleep thinking about it, thinking of all the angles. You wake up thinking about it. So yeah, you invest time, and so and then the more you invest the time, you see how solid the project is. But this may be a case where you may have to walk on this one.
Well, we'll see.
Right.
We'll see. But yeah, the clock's ticking now, so we we gotta be able to do some things.
Yeah.
But we want to thank everybody for being on with us today, or for listening to the show. We'll be back on next week for another show, and we hope everybody has a great week and good investing with your projects. If you have any questions, feel free to give us a call or email down below. If you want some consultation on a property, or looking for funding on a property, contact us down below to be able to do that. We're always looking for good projects to be able to invest in. So give us a ring. We'll be happy to help.
Thanks.
Okay. Thank you. Bye.